So we have a series of bylaw changes that Jeff sent out, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Jeff, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Yeah. 3 weeks ago, to just, you know, our bylaws got changed 4 years ago when we became a GU. We really haven't updated them since then. This can be kind of a difficult process. Hopefully you have had a chance to review the bylaw changes we've proposed, and you might have thoughts on them. If you don't have any thoughts on them, or if all you want to do is obfuscate and make our lives difficult, you know, go ahead. It's your union, but I think other people in the room might not be happy with you. So let's get this started, okay? Thank you.
All right, so I'll go through them. Some of these, again, are handbook specific, bylaw specific. So as Neil said, if you're not overly familiar with them, you might not even know that this is a change or why it's a change. But some of it is just getting things updated that haven't been updated. The first one that's in there is there was no position of executive director for Sevens in the current bylaws. John's been filling that position, and as he mentioned, doing a lot of work with it. So the first proposal is to officially add that position to our bylaws.
Okay, we're gonna do this Robert Rules of Order like. There are microphones around if you do want to speak, but Robert Rules of Order calls it. I first ask for a motion to approve the changes to the bylaws. I then ask for a motion to second. We need to actually record who's saying all these things. Nope. We're voting on these individually. Now we have discussion. I will start the discussion for each of these bylaw changes so you understand the board's motivation behind proposing them. And then if you want to discuss it further or have any questions about it, we can talk. The reason for this executive director of Sevens is John's been doing the job for the last 3 years, and he hasn't been on officially in our bylaws. We want to make it an executive director position, which is different than just a regular division director or director position. The executive directors report to the executive board, which is made up of the NERFU president, treasurer, secretary, executive director of 15s, executive director of colleges, and this would put him on with the executive director of Sevens. We think the growth in the sport is enough to justify this. The amount of work that he's doing is enough to justify this, and the amount of money that we're spending on it is enough to justify this, I think, is the board justification behind this proposal. Discussion. His job description would not change from what it currently is to be the director of Sevens. We're just moving him up to be an executive director, so that one of the things in our bylaws is that we have this executive committee. I should explain this. Our executive committee, per our bylaws, is able to make changes to our handbook and approve budgets and things like that without a full board vote. The executive directors and the executive committee commit themselves to coming to more regular meetings in person and do so knowing that they have an elevated status within the board. Personally, since I have been president, I've only held one executive board meeting. Every board meeting has been open to everyone. The only executive board meeting I held was because it was a crap night out and I didn't want everyone to have to drive in from Albany. So the next board may have different views on that. That's up for them to decide, but what we're doing here, if we elect this or we make this position an executive position, is just making them, I guess, more significant within the board. Yeah. Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none, I will move to vote. All in favor of the change to the bylaws, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, the motion carries.
All right, second one is fairly similar. The current bylaws have a position of executive director referees. In my time on the board, that hasn't been observed or the case. There is Mark, who is on the board, but not as an executive director position. And I don't know when that kind of got to that point or if there's a separation. But again, as Neil mentioned, the executive director is kind of that small group that oversees NERFU. And NERS is its own sort of separate entity. So when we looked at the bylaws and kind of cleaned them up a little bit, that was one of the pieces that seemed to be not necessary. So that would be the piece that what we're looking at now. The proposal is to remove the position of executive director referees.
Motion to vote. I need someone to raise their hand to vote on this motion. Williams College. Do I have a second? Charles River Women is the second. Okay. This one's pretty straightforward. Mark's been doing this job because we begged him to do it for the last few years. NERS used to have wanted a bigger role on the board. I think they've kind of stepped away from that. Mark has been great to us, but making him an executive director doesn't really make a lot of sense per our bylaws. He would stay on the board as someone from NERS that serves as a consultant to our board. He would not be able, or his replacement would not be able to vote on NERFU matters. If that's one of the crucial things, if everyone understands that. The referee society would no longer have a vote on our board. Consequently, NERFU does not have any representation on the NERS board, and we've never been invited to vote on anything for their board either. This is not a he said, she said thing, it's just trying to make it even. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, I move for a vote. All in favor of the change, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, next proposal, and this is a little bit different, so stick with me on this one. So our current board, we have an executive director of clubs, who's Mike Martin. We have an executive director of colleges, that's Brian Early, and we have an executive director now of Sevens, that's John McGecky. So based on the configuration and the fact that Sevens has kind of taken off at the college level in the spring, as well as primarily into the summer for clubs and colleges, the proposal is to, instead of having those three positions, have one executive director for 15s, college and club, and one director for Sevens, college and club. So it would be reducing the number of executive board positions by one, and it would be consolidating to 15s and 7s formats.
Motion. So moved. TR from Newport, second. I can't hear you. Keene State. The reason behind this is just that our colleges have consolidated down into one division, essentially at this point. Brian has been doing an excellent job of monitoring both Patty and Matt, sorry. I could just call you Mart. But there didn't need to be an executive director position in the board's opinion. And what we thought was that we're bifurcating the union, essentially, into both 7s and 15s, given the amount of attention that 7s has been getting and the amount of money we've been spending on it, and our continued involvement in 15s. It's the way that we think the sport is going. So we're creating these two positions to elevate both, and we're putting all of the colleges underneath the executive director of 15s. So whoever, if it's Mike Martin or whoever replaces him, would have all the senior men's and women's clubs, and then all the college clubs in D3. Discussion.
I've been involved with the board since 1998. My concern with this is that the political, to me, an executive director is the person who sits in New England and looks nationally, looks outside, manages our relationship with USA Rugby, other unions, that kind of stuff. I do not see that politically aligned, as 7s is one thing, 15s is another thing. Colleges deal with a whole different set of administrators. On some issues, there are some comments about things. Clubs, another. Clubs have a totally different structure of governance. The colleges are very dynamic right now. In the past 5 years, and I think in the next 10, there's a big opportunity for college rugby to sort of burst to the forefront, maybe become a sport that you see more on TV, and to kind of, I think it would be best if we had somebody who could kind of step up and be that college person. Okay, I think putting the 7s director as executive director is a great move, but I would like to keep both the 15s club and the 15s college executive directors, because the college executive director, there's just a lot of things that could be done there, and then that way the college directors of divisions can turn around and focus inward, because they run what's here in New England, and that's where I see the split there. Okay? To have one 15s director, that person is then got just a whirlwind of stuff on several different fronts, and I don't, unless we're paying that person a full-time employee, I just don't see anybody being able to really affect it.
We're not paying anybody on this board except for the web administrator. Anyone else? Yes? So we currently have, as of like right now, we have a president, a treasurer, a secretary. The secretary is essentially the vice president, for lack of a better word. We have an executive director of colleges, we have an executive director of clubs, and we have an executive director of sevens. That is currently what our executive board is made up of right now. There's 6 officers on it after we approve that last thing. What the board has recommended is that we get rid of the executive director of colleges and bifurcate into 7s and 15s. Sorry for using the word bifurcate, but my old professor is here, John McKenzie, and I think he'd enjoy it. No, sorry. I'm sorry. I did meant to mention this. We would also further in our bylaw changes is we're proposing that we split our men's colleges division director duties into 3 different roles. It's currently 1 person doing it, but because of our relationship with Nescro, we've created 3 different competitions, I guess, Matt, will be the best word for them, divisions. They're not divisions, but so we're saying that that role gets split into 3. No.
So those 2 added division directors at the college level would be for the Champions Cup, the Challenge Cup, and the Developmental Cup, 15s as well as 7s. So they'd have, essentially the proposal is they'd have 1 executive director to go to for 15s, they'd have 1 executive director to go to for 7s.
Would you describe the dynamic of the board with executive versus non-executive voting? We're basically saying reducing one executive committee member. What does that effectively happen?
Yeah. So that gets into that executive committee, which I discussed before. Per our bylaws, we have 2 separate organizing bodies. And I feel compelled to tell everyone this, that our bylaws were given to us by USA Rugby when we wanted to become a geographic union and separate ourselves from Empire and Met New York 4 or 5 years ago. They gave us a set of bylaws that we had to accept. We negotiated a lot of those terms, but some things were non-negotiable. One of those bylaw changes was that we have 2 separate voting classes within our board. And I'm not a lawyer. I think Franny Russell was just here. He might be, but where'd he go? Bastard. Anyways, I've never used it because I think it's just a political trick. Our union was given these bylaws by USA Rugby because other unions are using them. What they do is they stipulate there are 2 separate voting classes. There's an executive committee, which gets to vote on things like our budget and our month-to-month operating, and then there is a whole committee, a larger, I forget what the exact word for it is, but let's call it the NERFU committee. A union committee is what it's called actually, that gets to vote on matters that pertain to everyone in the union. So division directors, per our bylaws, are not allowed to vote on things like our budget, how we spend our money, what we do with our money, what we do every month, where the NERFU tournament's going to be, where we're going to allow championships to be held, what our relationship with NERS is, things like that. I, in my presidency, have never used that. I have always made it a union-wide vote so that every division director, every executive director, every treasurer, president, secretary gets to vote on these things. But I'm not going to be your president anymore. So these kind of things need to be cleared up so that the next president doesn't really have to deal with the political baggage, essentially.
So from a practical perspective, let's say an internal issue here we have division 2 women.
Yeah.
Executive directors are always involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the division directors, they're not part of, women might not be involved.
So if we made like a situation where like we got a D2 player that is being suspended and she's appealing her suspension, the executive committee would only be the only ones to actually have the authority to vote on that. Division directors would not. We would be reducing, but we've already added the sevens director. Right. Yes.
So just to be clear, he's worried about not having executive power will also.
I'm not going to speak for Bob. I think what Bob said was, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but Bob's been on the board for a long time. He's been on longer than I have, actually. And he views the executive director position as someone that's not only looking internally and trying to manage the division directors underneath him, but also, or her, I should say, but also looking outwards and trying to find new opportunities for growth or expansion or areas for new opportunity. As the executive director, that's part of your job. And I think, Bob, correct me again if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is that by reducing this role to 15s and 7s, we're taking that away from the colleges.
Yeah, if I may expound, yeah, I think there are things about college rugby that are totally separate from club rugby. There's a lot of, in a lot of ways, there's a lot more politics, a lot more policy that you have to manage in college rugby. And plus these days, there's one heck of a lot more opportunity. I mean, I think the ideal person, if we could walk in, somebody walked in here that was a college rugby person, maybe a former coach or administrator, who was also in the media, had been in the sports media, that would be the ideal person. I'd love to see a person like that be executive director, to take advantage of the possible opportunities of, say, getting a NERFU game of the week on Nessie or something like that. And that, we're not that far away from that, but that's a specialized thing. It's totally different than managing rugby. That's now managing the organization, managing the media, and that's totally different than what the clubs would be looking at. That's just totally different.
Yes.
I might be, maybe I'm dead. Can you just
You look like you're a winger, maybe.
what is rationale? I don't think I think I've heard what the structure is, what it goes to, and all that, but why do it?
So, again, I'm only up here as president. This is my role. We discussed it at multiple AGM meetings that we saw, not contrary to Bob's point, but more to the point that if the focus was more on 15s and on 7s, we'd have 2 people dedicated to doing those areas of growth. And anyone else on the board is very happy to correct me if I'm wrong, but 15s is increasingly becoming a fall-only season, and 7s on the college level and to some of our senior clubs is becoming a spring and summer thing. So we were trying to equalize the board with the number of executive officers so that you could have a vote of 3-2 as opposed to 3-3 and have a tie, which we currently don't have anything in our bylaws to change on, and also elevate the level of conversation for both 7s and 15s at the same time, if that makes any sense. Yes?
First, what do other GUs do in terms of this kind of structure?
To be candid with you, in my interaction, and I'll let Jeff, who's our Congress rep, also speak to this, but a lot of GUs are dropping colleges at just dropping them. They have told colleges they're no longer allowed to be in their union any longer. And they have an executive director of senior club rugby. And that's, I think, one of the saddest days in this union was when all those colleges left, personally. I never wanted to do that, but the people who replaced me might.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint as a union too, so we're a NESCRO union, right? So NESCRO kind of on a national level oversees our college competitions anyway. So Matt has worked for the men's side really closely with Steve Cohen, who oversees NESCRO, but we pay into them to sort of facilitate our competition and to get our teams pathways to the championship. So there's a lot that's done above us anyway that we really wouldn't be able to impact. That's what a lot of other unions across the country have seen and just figured we can back away. If we don't have the authority to really oversee it and kind of dictate how it works, let's just let NESCRO handle the whole thing. So we're not there yet. I think we want to keep those clubs and keep the college level of competition in our union for good reason. But there is that extra layer above us that we really don't have any control over. one of the conversations when we were talking about this proposal was by adding the division directors who have the most face-to-face, day-to-day interaction with the clubs, and because those levels of competition all have different endpoints, that would hopefully almost add more rather than take away. So Matt works directly with the clubs. Matt then goes to Brian if there's something from an executive level that's necessary. But Matt's work to the clubs, I would ask the colleges, they've probably had more direct conversations with Matt than they have with Brian. So by adding 2 more of those division directors to work with each of those levels, now each level has their own dedicated director, which we've never had before.
We don't have one prepared. I could doodle something if you like, but president, secretary, treasurer, executive directors. That makes any sense to you? It's president's at the top, secretary underneath, and then the executive directors. And then underneath those executive directors, the individual division directors. And Lori's nothing. Yeah.
So from the men's college director perspective, why I think it's a good move is so I spend the majority of time in this position is internal looking, making sure that 30 some odd teams are scheduled. I mean, it's basically scheduling, coordination, making sure everyone's on the same page. Because of that, because there's so many moving parts, there is lost opportunity. Kind of where I'm alluding to is that there's very little, if any, of my work's been done on the seventh side. And so one of the things I've done is trying to connect with John more and really figuring out how we put things together in the spring to make the springtime not a time where students just go off and bring them up here, just train for 5 months and get ready for the fall. And I really haven't been able to have a chance to do that. And by bringing this into the seventh, it's easy. The 15th is much more organized. The seventh is really in its infancy, but there's some structure around it. And connect this position or the executive position and connecting with John would really help those directors.
And I would say, just to add to that, so currently, I don't really have good understanding of college sevens, but I don't really have as much insight into the college sevens environment right now in the current position, just because I don't necessarily hear from the college director. When Matt's talking about something that recently we've started to kind of talk to. So to that point, one of the things that I would look to do is to try and structure that. So understanding where USC rugby potentially may go and really making the difference between 15th season versus the 7th season, I think this may make sense going forward to enable that competitive structure to be put in place.
So are you talking about kind of moving towards the style that several of the more varsity Division II teams have, where there's 15 in the fall and 7 in the spring, very clearly for colleges? Is that what you're looking at?
I can't say what people are looking at. What I can tell you from my experience on the board for the last few years is that John's workload, it used to be something that was a toss-off, sevens. We just, the executive director did it, and he or she got applications in January, and really the biggest trouble was just fielding when you were going to host different tournaments. It's grown quite a lot since then. So much so that we all just voted on making it an executive director position. So sevens has become, I think, almost equally as important as regular club rugby to the union. And I don't see that going away. I see that just furthering, I see that growth just developing. Again, my opinion. Yes?
So my understanding is that you have 15s and 7s, and they will underneath them have support of the directors.
Yes. So the 15s director will have men's D1, senior men's D1, senior men's D2, senior men's D3, senior women's D1, D2, D3, college D3, college women D3.
And the idea is that the director will focus internally and the executive board members will be externally.
Correct. Yeah.
So is it the consensus
So very similar to this meeting, nothing is a consensus. It was voted upon, and more people on this board wanted this than less people did.
What is that for hope?
I think the hope is that by consolidating 15s under one person, and I would, if anyone else on this board wants to speak to this, they're happy to. But my understanding of the rationale that I got from these meetings was that by consolidating the 15s and the 7s into these different roles, these people are then going to be able to be focused upon their individual, I guess, brand of rugby, for lack of a better term. We're not trying to take away from anything from the colleges. We're trying to add more people to the college division director roles. It's just, it gets kind of unwieldy when the current way we have it, where the executive director of colleges is only managing 2 people. And, you know, where do we go with this, and how do we grow the sport, and how do we respond to all the college's needs, I guess is what people are thinking. I ask anyone else on the board that wants to speak to this to do so.
Yeah, just, you know, from the executive director of colleges, my torch is pretty much being passed to, and I think it's, as you go, as any organization goes through change, you must recognize those changes and go with them. John has come up greatly, as has, but I think it's a good move. It's a move that we made several years ago when we formed conferences, and but that doesn't mean, in speaking to Bob, that the positions, that responsibility will not remain with NERFA. Will just remain with another body. So I'm very happy to pass my torch, to let it go up. As we come up in alignment, that is proper to the particular task at hand, which is good rugby at the college level, high school level, and the clubs and senior clubs.
Yeah, sorry. So I just wanted to say before I let this go, I'm going to limit the conversation to this topic for another 5 minutes. If I can have a motion to approve that. Motion to approve discussion on this to 5 more minutes. Nichols? Second. Charles River? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. So this discussion's got 5 more minutes on it, then we're going to vote. Sorry. John was.
I was just going to say, this would allow us for sevens to consolidate a little bit, since there's such close work between college sevens and senior sevens. People play college 15s, then move on to play men's sevens or women's sevens in the summer. This would make it easier on him. The idea that there are deals negotiated for TV rights or something, that has to go all the way to the full executive director. I don't think there's any concern that we have problems. What this actually does is consolidate power from 3 positions to 2. Those people have better handle on what's going on. And now we only 2 people working with the president. The smaller you can make that group to make those decisions, the easier it is to communicate information right. So I don't see any reason this would cause a problem. And now the colleges have more representation in the board total than in for the added positions.
How about an amendment to make the executive director 15 just the executive director 15s for clubs? So you keep an executive director role for colleges and then for 15s clubs, and you have 3 men reporting to the.
It's actually, sorry, I got to do this whole Robert's Rules of Order thing and per our bylaws. Any changes to the proposed bylaws that you would like to propose would require you to vote down the current change, and then next year we would vote on a proposed amendment. I cannot amend bylaw changes that have been proposed on the floor. Per our bylaws, we are required as a board to send them out to you 21 days in advance. If you don't like the idea, just vote it down. I'm not, like, no one's going to get hurt about it. It's okay. We're just trying to streamline I think the board's just trying to streamline how they run and how they operate, and I can't make changes on the fly like that.
If you vote this down, it has the exact same effect, so we'll keep the two directors.
Exactly.
Simple.
Yeah.
So 15s, you have individuals that focus on the college brackets. Assume that it's passed.
I mean, I didn't want to get into too much of the minutia, because God almighty,
Well,
like,
my question is, are there people working under the sevens side that specify college within their titles, that they have those partnerships? Or is it going to be more focused on higher?
Here, so the way to think about it, it's like a matrix, right? So you've got division directors, whether they're looking after the club or whether they're looking after the college. They're focused on the teams within their bracket, within their purview. The executive directors, the way that we're talking about, is focused on the organization of the competition and building a framework. They won't necessarily be as involved with the club or the college itself. So we will build a framework, we'll build a structure in order to enhance the competition and to try and drive that forward and make it more organized than it is today. Because I'd argue that the college 7 structure isn't that organized today. So by doing that, you would still have the representation, you would still have your division director working with you, and they would be communicating. So during the 15th season, they would go talk to the 15th director to understand what's going on with the structure of the competition, and then for the 7s, they would go to the 7th person. That's kind of the better way to look at it.
I'm a huge supporter of less is more, stringent and toxic attitude. However, my big concern with a move like this, college rugby ultimately is completely different than men's rugby in the fact that we have huge eligibility guidelines, we have all this bureaucratic BS that we have to do with every school, like all the red tape we have to go through, and a separate dedicated executive director that works with the colleges. I know we have our division directors also, but an ED that can sit there and back this as well. It's a huge benefit when we go to our administrator and say, we need help to get a training. We need this, we need that. And I worry that when we have 30 plus clubs in college men's alone, you have the women's college team, and then you have all of these men's teams that are playing, which we have over 100 men's teams or 70 men's teams, and plus the senior female team. That's a lot to put on one executive director to advocate appropriately for, especially when we have the bureaucratic need. We have all the bureaucratic red tape that we have to constantly fight.
okay, thank you. The 5 minutes is up. If anyone would like to make a motion to extend the 5 minutes of discussion, do so now. Motion, Springfield. Second from Greentown, thank you. Okay, we're gonna have a discussion for another 5 minutes. Oh, motion to vote. I'm sorry. I thought you were extending the discussion. My bad. Does anyone want to make a motion to extend the discussion of this motion? If that makes any damn sense. Okay. I don't see anyone making that motion, so I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of removing the executive director of college position and making the executive director of 15th position, say aye. It looks like we're going to have to do a tally. You need to stand up. You need to say what club you're representing, and we need to be able to vote on it that way. So all in favor, please stand. No, motion's not going to carry. All opposed, say aye. All opposed, please stand. By an aye count, I say the motion does not pass. Good? Let's move on. Jeffrey.
That was the juiciest one, I promise. All right, next one was the piece related to this. So currently Matt oversees all of men's college. So he is the only division director for all those clubs. So the second proposal was to add 2 additional division directors. So we have 3 total division directors, 1 for the Champion Cup, 1 for the Challenge Cup, and 1 for the Developmental Cup. So that would allow those schools to have their own, in that level of competition, their own dedicated division director, who would currently now fall under the executive director of colleges.
And the only discussion that I really have on this is that when Matt came on the board, he had a full head of hair. So, yeah. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands for discussion, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposition. Motion carries.
Next one,
Sorry, Robert's Rules of Order. I need someone to approve the motion I need a club. Charles River, I think you've already approved the motion today. I need someone else. Amos has approved the motion. Do I have a second? Providence. Providence seconds the motion. Providence men's or women? Women. Okay, I think that was Amos men too. All right, cool. So all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
okay, the next one, on the women's club level, there is currently a Division III division director. There are only 2 clubs in Division III. So the idea was to remove the Division III division director, but possibly break out the Division I and Division II, which is currently under 1 division director, into 2. So currently there's 1 division director for Division III with only 2 clubs in that division.
Anyways, I could really use a beer. So this one's about. This one's about the fact that our women's divisions now are so intertwined with Empire that most of our D1, D2, and D3 women are playing a schedule that forces them to play teams from New York, New Jersey, and the rest of that shithole. Anyway, that was my first swear of the day. No, Albany's great. Everyone loves Albany and Saratoga, no doubt. Anyways, so the idea here is that Tracy Watson, who's been our D1, D2 women's director, would essentially just get a slightly smaller role, and we would be able to expand the role of the D3 director because that person, like I said, is currently trying to work with Empire on a regular basis. That's the idea behind this. I do want to clarify that it is not my intention or anyone else on this board's intention to further limit the amount of women on this board, not by a long shot. Thank you.
Motion to table until we have the breakout session.
Motion to table until what?
Until we have the breakout session.
We have to do elections? We have to do elections after this?
Yeah.
So the position needs to be elected. Seeing no discussion, I move to, yeah. I have this in the blue sweater, yep.
So right now we have a D1 and a D2, 1 director.
Yeah.
And then 1 D3, it's going to be 1 director, 1 department.
No, there will still be 2.
Okay. It's going to be 1 and then 2 and 3.
Tracy, how much work are you doing on D1? I think most of your work is spent dealing with D2 issues. Is that accurate?
It depends on the season. So right now it's D1 and D2 that takes most of the time.
The D3 reports.
Without the D3 clubs, then I move it to A1 and A2.
Yeah.
So it really depends on both the same.
It's all about Brooklyn. Anyone? Yes?
How many D1 women's teams are there currently?
In New England, I think there are only 3.
So we're making it a director for 3 instead of a director for 2?
No, the director is a direct liaisonship and advocating role with Empire all of the time. So it's not like just an isolated position. Same with D2, is that we're always in conversation with the Empire clubs, and then throughout the CR3 all as well. So yeah.
For those unfamiliar, the CR3 is competitive region, which USA Rugby has assigned us to. Yes.
So where would that leave the two viable D3 clubs? Would they be absorbed into D2 or would we just be on our own?
So that's a great question that we wanted to discuss with you in the breakout session because we have no idea what's going on with D3 women. We have inclinations from our Empire counterparts that it might be going away. And we have also want to have a discussion with people about whether or not you guys are willing to go into a D2 that's stratified in such a way that we did similar to our men's way, where we have a Champions and a Challengers Cup. We have different ideas to discuss about that. What we're trying to do, if you can't, what we're trying to do is reduce the number of people on the board so that when we have board meetings, we're not there for 4 hours and talking about things. At the same time, giving each of those people on the board more responsibility and more power. That's.
I understand that. I just don't want us to get left out.
I do not. No, we're not going away from women's D3. If women's D3 want to stay around.
So Neil, is more managing our resources more efficient, is what Neil is talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, as long as we're not getting kind of shafted in that deal, I'm fine with that.
Yes, Bob.
My take on this is a couple different things. We have 4 directors on the men's side. We only have 2 on the women's. With this proposal, it'll remain at 2, which that's not the end all and be all of deciding this question, but it's certainly 4 to 3. I like those numbers better than 4 to 2. That's a minor point. Major point, when I first came on the board, I was Division 3 director. We had 3.5 teams in men's Division 3, and now we have 12 in Division 4, which was created in the interim. Point is growth. To have that Division 3 women's director, that should be the person who's looking at growth, who's looking at those lower teams. I absolutely agree. Tracy's been a saint with the amount of patience and work she's been put in dealing with Empire, and I really think those two need to be split. There needs to be a D1 and a D2 women's director. But the D3 women's director, I think, can be valuable, and I'd love somebody in this room to say, pick up that flag and say, keep this position, I want it, and I want to go beat the bushes and dig up some teams. Because I did it, back in 98, 99, and I think it did make a difference. So I just think keeping that D3 director, 3 women's directors, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Just clarify, if this change is adopted, what would, there's still only 2 women's directors, what would their respective roles be? What would be the new structure in that sense?
So it depends on what happens with D3. The board senses doom as it regards D3. We need to make decisions at our AGM in February that allow us to manage what happens in the fall. That's unfortunate timing, but that's what happens. If D3 folds and we don't have someone that's in charge of those teams, we worry about them falling through the cracks. What the board is trying to do with this motion is trying to predict the future and be covered for it in case. So if the D3 doesn't fall and we have a new, let's call them D1, D2, D3 director, I don't you guys can figure that out, I'm stepping down. Then that person has responsibility. We're only talking about a couple of clubs here though. So it's not, it's not the amount of workload that other people currently have. Correct me where I'm wrong.
So the director, what my function has been, one of the functions has been is to craft the schedule for D1 and D2 alongside the Empire and Empire Counterpoint. That will still continue. So that's part of the role. And the other part of the role is to deal with the internals within the Nurflu clubs, and then be an advocate between our Nurflu clubs and Empire again, and then within the CRP structure as well. So it's all of this horizontal stuff that won't
Guys, I'm sorry, again, I just want to let everyone know, we're only on bylaw change number 5. We have 4 more to go for bylaws. We have a handful of handbook revisions. I'm going to again propose that we limit discussion on this for 5 more minutes. Do I have someone to approve that motion? Portland, do I have a second? Have they already voted, made motions? Okay, so we got 5 more minutes to discuss this.
I have a question just to clarify. So, as you said on the last one, we're voting on a specific motion that's up if we don't accept or reject it as written.
If you don't approve the motion, the position of Women's D3 Division Director stands on the board, continues to exist. We currently don't have a candidate.
My question is just a possible people, because that said if you can break it down, it's not a package deal. If we get to do it first, the D3 coordinator, then we split the D1 and D2. Is that?
I think yes, and I think there has to be a bit of trust in the people that you're voting to the board to do what's right. We have multiple women division directors here saying that this is something that they're interested in doing and pursuing, and they think it's right, and they're not going away. So, there has to be some kind of level of trust that when September comes and we know what's happened to D3 women's, that we can make the right decision.
My question is just, if we accept this D3 goes away, does accepting this also mean that we split those two?
The motion is simply to remove the D3 director is the exact wording of the motion.
Then there'll be another one, split the director, so two votes.
Sorry, so per the bylaw changes that Jeff sent out, consideration, Women's Club, remove D3 Senior Director as there are only 2 clubs, but break out D1 and D2 into 2 Division Director positions. Anyone else on this? Okay. All in favor of the motion, please stand. Only 1 vote per club, right? Okay, all opposed, please stand. Seeing only 2 opposition and 36 people standing in favor of, the motion passes. And next one.
Next one, NERFU has a representative to Congress, to USA Rugby Congress. It's technically the Atlantic North Club representative, so that's currently me. So we are, Atlantic North is the competitive region that we're a part of, so they break it out that way. So that is the seat that we have. We don't really have any say in why that's our seat, but that's what it is. So the proposal is that the executive committee can appoint the GU's member to Congress. That just hadn't been in the bylaws for some reason. It seems to make a lot of sense, but the people that the membership elects as the executive committee would be given the ability to represent the union's representative to Congress.
The question is, how's it been done previously? And previously, the president typically stood in this role, at least as long as I've been on the board. It's been the president that's been the representative to Congress. And when I became president, I became so fed up with USA Rugby Congress that I was going to quit being president of NERFU. And as a compromise, I asked Jeff to stand in. So it's a horrible, horrible, horrible organization. I hate USA Rugby. The number one reason why I'm stepping down from this role is USA Rugby. And my wife's going to kill me. Any discussion? make a motion to vote on the matter? Got those? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Jeff, I'll just do this one. We don't have anything in our bylaws currently that says USA Rugby committees. Regarding how USA Rugby forms their committees, it's become a problem for us. Again, I'll refer back to my earlier statement about my hatred of USA Rugby. So we wanted to put something in our bylaws that would give us some teeth when we wanted to go after USA Rugby, saying that the geographic union, the NERFU geographic union, must approve any representative members that USA Rugby appoints to its committees. Currently, USA Rugby is able to appoint anyone they want. They don't have to be serving on our board. They don't even have to be a member of a NERFU club, but they say that they represent New England. I will not name specific names, but people in this room know who I'm talking about. So what we're saying is that USA Rugby can't do that anymore. This is a toothless vote, because USA Rugby can do whatever the hell they want. We're just saying we want to have something in the bylaws that we can refer back to, so that any USA Rugby member who's on a committee who also claims to be a NERFU member and has not been appointed can't legally do so. Discussion? Motion to vote on the matter. I'm looking over here at the side of the room. You guys been quiet. Saratoga. Second? Providence. All in favor? Any opposed? One opposition? What club? Thank you. Board meeting attendance requirements. Jeff, if you don't mind, I'm just going to keep. I know. Technically, Jeff's supposed to do this, but I'm just trying to get us through. Board meeting attendance requirements. Conference calls would constitute an acceptable meeting format. We would change our bylaws, the language in our bylaws, to have matching requirements for executive board and the management board. If you remember earlier, I was talking about the two different voting classes. Currently, our executive board is required to attend meetings in person to vote on things. What we're asking is that the bylaws be changed so that executive board members, like Shannon, who lives an hour north of Albany, would be able to call in to the monthly calls, phone calls or conferences that we have to vote on matters. It's really just kind of cleaning up something that's been in our bylaws. Any? Say again? So moved by Springfield again. Second? Bennington. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, I move to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, guys, last one. Terms of service and elections. This one's kind of, it's chunky, I'm not going to lie to you. So, for those of you who've been around for a long time, you know that NERFU used to have executive board members elected on odd years and division directors voted on even years. That way there wouldn't be wholesale changes to the board. When we changed our bylaws, we accepted USA Rugby's mandate that we have all of our elections done on even years. Ergo, this whole board could be ousted today, and we'd have to find new officers to replace them. We want to change the bylaws so that executive board members are elected on even years and division directors are elected on odd years. So next year, is that right? Is that the way Oh God, it's really quick. The menthols. Next year would be division director elections again. And the executive directors that are elected today would be in this position for 2 years. What they're trying to hedge against is essentially what almost happened this year, where a lot of us were all stepping down and we didn't have candidates to replace us. And the board could have been run by just a couple of people. Motion to vote on the measure? UNE Women. Do I have a second? Linden State. Discussion on the matter. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to. No, the short answer is no. Anyone else? miss me next year when you do this thing again. I'm not here, huh? All in favor, say aye.